Well, good Thursday to you. Not a happy Thursday. Nothing to be celebrated this morning, I'm sorry to say, especially in my hometown of Washington, D.C., where a tragedy at Reagan National Airport last night has shut down the city. And air traffic and the airport is closed at least until 11 a.m. Eastern Time, they're saying. That may be extended. Have not seen the skies silent in Washington, D.C., as they are this morning, since shortly after September 11th, 2001, when all air traffic in and out of Washington, D.C. was shut down for weeks on end. And I've got a story to tell here, because you are doubtless aware at this point of the aviation accident at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, just across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C. proper, and a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter with a crew of 3 aboard colliding with an American Eagle, a Canadian commuter jet, and everyone aboard both aircraft killed. A total of 67 people killed, 64 aboard the American Eagle aircraft and 3 aboard the U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter. It is a shockingly improbable collision, the likes of which you just don't see. And I want to say that last night at home with my best girl, we had a moment that we later realized was, in all probability, and I think inarguably, the incident occurring out our window from our new apartment where we've been for a very short time. And honestly, less than a month now in the apartment, and we're still learning the skyscape out our windows. But in the 9 o'clock hour last night, my best girl was sitting on the couch and reading, and I'm reading, and my best girl is reading, and she jumped up, alarmed, out of the couch and ran to the window, pointing to the sky, and said, "Did you see that? I just saw," she said, "what was it, a shooting star? What was it?" And by the time I got up and darted over there, I'm pretty fast, there was nothing to see in the sky. But she described seeing a streak of light, and she said possibly 2. Was it a double shooting star? What was that? Saw these out the window, and then we sat back down and got back to our lives. And I said, "God darn, I missed the double shooting star." And it wasn't for another more than an hour that we both learned that there had been an aviation disaster at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, and we pulled out again, because we're still learning our sky around us, pulled out a map. I pulled up a large iPad and pulled up Google Earth and drew a line from where we are now to the end of the runway at Reagan Airport. And the line of sight is there, and we see the planes going in, as we have for many years, going into Reagan Airport, coming south along the Potomac River. When they're coming from north to south, we see the planes coming in for landing. When they're taking off from south to north, we see the planes leaving Reagan Airport and flying out. And last night, watching the air traffic, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary, and then suddenly there was no air traffic. There was no more air traffic. And again, through this morning, getting up, we can hear the airplanes, the airliners off in the distance. We certainly see and hear helicopters on an ongoing basis in Washington, D.C. They are essentially all government helicopters. It's a very restricted airspace, Washington, D.C. You can't come fly your private helicopter. Only one local TV station has a helicopter, Channel 4, the local NBC affiliate. They have a news helicopter, but it's essentially never in the air because they really can't come into D.C. airspace. So when you see a helicopter in Washington, D.C., it's virtually always a government helicopter. You have D.C. police helicopter, U.S. Park Police helicopter. You've got one hospital MedStar helicopter for medevac. And other than that, you see U.S. military helicopters, generally Blackhawks. We still have some old Hueys in the air around here, too. And we have the brand new, soon-to-be Marine Corps Marine One helicopter that you see flying around too. But in any event, without getting carried away on that, you see Marine Corps and U.S. Army helicopters. You see the air traffic going in and out of, from where we live, going in and out of Reagan Airport. And last night when my best girl jumped up, it's not, she's not prone to alarm, but she jumped up and ran to the window, and I ran to see what had alarmed her. And we later learned, we believe, that what she saw was as a result of the collision of the American Eagle airplane and the U.S. Army helicopter at Reagan Airport. Hadn't quite made landfall over the Potomac River, but right there at Reagan Airport. And everyone killed, 67 people killed. And we're learning this morning also that there are members of the U.S. Figure skating team aboard the airplane, and they were apparently hosting at least a couple of Russian figure skaters in the United States visiting for skating competitions, presumably. Everyone dead. The Russians are involved. The NTSB is the lead investigating agency. The FAA is involved as well, and the Department of Defense and the Army will be involved in their investigation as well. And there are nothing but unanswered questions. How could this happen? It seems almost impossible for this to happen, given the symphony of air traffic that we have in Washington all day, every day. Helicopters, usually military, weaving in and out of civilian air traffic, usually out of Reagan. And it always works. I was, in fact, trading texts with a friend this morning, and people are commenting, boy, the number of times, and on the phone, too, now that I think of it, how many times have you flown in and out of Reagan Airport, and you see the helicopters going up and down the Potomac River, and you might even comment, wow, it's amazing how well these air patterns fold together, how well the military helicopters and the civilian aircraft live in harmony in Washington, D.C. This is really a freak incident, and it's leading to all kinds of conjecture and conspiracy theories immediately. In fact, I've got a great friend, who is a news reporter, a longtime news reporter, very well-established news reporter, and a guy who is just not at all. He would never buy into any conspiracy theory ever. And this morning he texted me after looking. There's a clip of video that the local media got a hold of first, and now national media has, showing the actual collision in the dark sky. And you see the two light signatures of the airliner and the helicopter, and you see them collide. And when you see it, you say to yourself, well, how can that be? How could aircraft A not have seen aircraft B? That seems impossible. And you're flying a U.S. Army helicopter out of Fort Belvoir, and you know that Reagan Airport is there and that you're flying by it, and you know that there are airliners coming in and out of there. So how is it possible that the helicopter pilot, U.S. Army helicopter pilot, highly trained, and how could they not have known they're coming into the air traffic pattern for Reagan Airport? And how could they not have seen the airplane coming in? It seems impossible, right? So my friend, longtime news reporter and never thought any conspiracy theory made any sense, texted me this morning, do you think the Army pilot did it on purpose? And I thought, wow, coming from him, that's completely unbelievable, because he's never said anything like that in his life. He said, I can't help but wondering if it was an insider attack, Army pilot who did it intentionally. And this is from a guy who would never say anything like this ever in all the years that I've known him. And I thought, wow, that is nuts. Now, it's all over the internet, and the internet does that. But this man is not someone that is inclined to or prone to that sort of thinking or that sort of talk at all. Then I saw online, of course, because that's what online is for. Everybody's all over conspiracy theories already. But it is almost impossible to believe that this happened, not just because it's in my backyard at my local airport, and because I've certainly flown on lots of military helicopters over the years, and I trust military helicopter pilots to be good helicopter pilots, well-trained, aware, and you're out of Fort Belvoir. This is your backyard. You know the neighborhood. You know the airport. So it is inexplicable, let's just say. And I'm going to wait. Now, the NTSB, the FAA, and the Pentagon, the Army, are going to be investigating, and it will doubtless take some time. But we have a brand new Secretary of the Department of Transportation. It's not Pete Buttigieg, or he wouldn't have been there yet, but Sean Duffy, part of the press conference this morning. And he did say, he was asked whether it was preventable, and he said absolutely. And that is, I think, clearly true even from the casual bystander, that it was a preventable tragedy, a preventable accident. It reminds people who've been in Washington for a long time of the Air Florida plane crashing into the 14th Street Bridge decades ago, and the famous Lenny Skutnik, who was driving by the scene, the 14th Street Bridge, who stopped his car, got out, ran, dove into the frozen Potomac River and rescued people, the great Lenny Skutnik, who became a pullout at the State of the Union address with Ronald Reagan. But this was a nighttime crash, end of the runway. There are no roads nearby for people to jump out of their cars. The water in the Potomac River, I saw this morning on the local news, is about 36 degrees. Right now it is it's partly frozen. It was big swaths of the Potomac River were frozen over just a week ago or so, maybe a little more than a week ago. But it is it's a horrible tragedy. D.C. plane crash, no survivors expected, absolutely preventable, and this is a big deal. The plane coming out of Wichita, and 64 people aboard the airplane, 60 passengers apparently, and 4 crew aboard the U.S. Army Black Hawk, 3 crew, presumably all 3 U.S. Army personnel, and there are a lot of questions being raised, and I know that there are, we've got the Trump people in, not the Biden people in, and Sean Duffy, and they're looking for answers and for explanations. And sometimes there are no good explanations in situations like this. Also in my building, my best girl and I live in a building in Washington, D.C., and one of our neighbors in our building is an NTSB crash scene investigator. Great guy, really solid guy, great family. And I'm guessing because of his proximity that he might be involved in this too. And this is a neighbor that we see frequently, a great family. We talk to him every time we see him. And perhaps I'll see him later today. Now, people have been up all night. Everybody involved in this has been up all night. I also got text from another friend this morning just before coming into the radio station that choked me up. And our friend Corey, who has a boat, he's got a boat, and my best girl and I and friends, Corey invites his friends out on his boat on the Potomac River, and we've been out and we go for the Trump parade on boats and things with big Trump flags, and Corey's a riot, a ton of fun. And because he's out on his boat a lot, he knows the D.C. police that are out on police boats, right? And when we're out on his boat, we pull up alongside the police boats, and the police boats pull up alongside us, and we talk and say hello and, make fun of things. But this morning, Corey texting with our friend, the D.C. police officer, boat patrol, and he said, "I can't put it into words, man. We were just pulling bodies all night. We were just pulling bodies all night." D.C. police officer, boat patrol, great guy, and not using names. Speaking of which, I also have the name of, I believe to be the pilot of the U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter, because I know some people in town, and people that I know some people in town. And I do have the name of at least one of the 3 crew members, and I believe the pilot of the Black Hawk helicopter, which I don't see the need to say it out loud yet. But we're tracking and paying attention and talking to people. So stay right here, and there's a lot of other news in the world, too. An arrest in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill yesterday. Someone that came to Washington to kill Republicans and to kill members of the Trump administration and to blow up the Heritage Foundation, arrested yesterday because the Democrats teach this sort of thing. So hopefully I'll get to that, too. In the meantime, we are at 888-630-9625. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. We're gathering and collecting here. We're learning as we go, and there are other things happening today that I need to update you on as well and share with you some that haven't been reported in the first place, like the loon arrested yesterday. Is it a man or is it a woman? This is one of the mysteries about the would-be mass murderer, political lunatic that the Democrats loosed on Washington. But let's get back to last night's tragedy on the Potomac River at Reagan National Airport. Let's go to Anthony, calling from Damascus, Maryland. Anthony, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Yeah, how you doing? Yeah, I got a text from my daughter this morning that she was driving at the Pentagon, and this is what she quoted me. See, I'm pretty sure I saw the helicopter, a huge low military helicopter was right over me as I was driving past the Pentagon last night around the time of the crash. I expected it to land at the Pentagon, but thought it was super weird that it took a left hard turn and headed towards the airport. And that was probably maybe 30 seconds before it had crashed.
No kidding.
Yeah, so it took a hard left turn and headed towards the Reagan National Airport.
Right, over toward the... Yeah, if you're headed south and passing the Pentagon and you bang a left, you head over to you're at the Potomac River very quickly. And Reagan Airport is just barely south of the Pentagon.
Yeah, she was heading towards Virginia from D.C.
Well, I tell you, there are, again, sitting in our living room on our couch, my best girl saw a giant flash and a streak in the sky, and to the point where she jumped up, and we see the air traffic all night long, and we see the helicopters all night long, and she jumped up alarmed and ran to the window, shouting, which never happens. It got me to spring up and run to the window, too. There are going to be a lot of eyewitness accounts, as there were all those years ago. Now, as I said, I have the name of one of the three crew members aboard the Black Hawk helicopter, which I'm not making public. I know the family has been notified. I know that for sure. But there are two other names of members of the Army flight crew, and I don't have those. There are, again, it's everybody's conjecturing and guessing, and the most likely scenario is that there was a miscommunication. It was a tragic accident, nothing nefarious or sinister to see here. But in 2025, you can't rule out anything until you rule out anything. That's the reality of the world that we live in. We're in a strange place right now. But big event here in Washington, just at the edge of Ronald Reagan National Airport, into the Potomac River. 67 dead, including 3 U.S. Army personnel, and we're trying to find out what's happening. Believe it or not, at MSDNC, they're already attacking the Trump administration, and they need mental help. They honestly need therapy. They need their families to abandon them, as has probably already happened repeatedly. But we'll get back to that. In the meantime, on the aviation mishap, as the military calls it, in the Potomac River at Ronald Reagan Airport, Washington, D.C., 67 dead. And we're still finding out. I mean, honestly, the sun came up not too long ago, and there's already been one major press conference this morning. There was a good press conference late last night, I think about 1 a.m. as well. And I've got to say that the collection of people, including the new Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, former member of the House of Representatives, and first responders, it was a really solid press conference this morning. But before we get into that, because they didn't have all that much information to share, I think they did share what they could, and there's more coming in every couple of minutes. So in the meantime, let's go back to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Major Kenneth Davis calling from Manassas, Virginia, a Black Hawk pilot. Major Davis, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hi, good morning, Chris.
Hey.
I listen to you on my way to work every day. And first and foremost, I just wanted to say my deepest sympathies go out to all the families of the people involved in the plane and helicopter crash in Army aviation. I've been a part of a couple of investigations and that stuff, and my heart goes out to the family members. But I was the commander of Alpha Company, 12th Aviation, one of the sister companies of the aircraft that was involved in the crash back in 2009 and 10. I commanded Alpha Company.
Wow. Well, tell me what you think we're witnessing here.
I don't want to speculate, but I can tell you that DC helo routes is what we call them. We have special maps and charts for the helo routes.
Uh-huh.
Out of my 15 years of being an aviator, it's the most complicated airspace I've ever flown in. We are all thoroughly trained on those routes and checked off on those routes by instructor pilots. But like I said, and you mentioned it earlier, there's a lot of traffic in that area, and then nighttime really increases dangers in aviation flight, specifically low level and helicopter. And I'm not sure if they were wearing NVGs or not. You can wear NVGs flying that airspace, or you can go unaided, which is basically flying just using the ambient light from the city. And also to mention, in that area right around the airport, you have to be at 200 feet and below.
Wow.
And the other thing with NVGs on, it's a lot easier to get off of your altitude and airspace heading, if you know what I mean, because your acuity, if you have 20/20 vision with goggles on, it's 20/50. Wow.
So your night vision goggles, and you may be using your night vision goggles. You may not be using your night vision goggles, and what do you prefer when you're flying through? You know the airspace well, right?
Yeah, I know it very well. I flew there for about 18 months. It's so bright there sometimes. If you're just staying on the helo routes, unaided is perfectly safe. In a very dark environment, say Iraq or something like that, or in the middle of nowhere, you definitely want to have NVGs on.
Right.
It's very, very, or you want to be on an instrument flight where you're high up above all the obstacles. But
right.
Yeah, I would prefer NVGs, and you always want to have them with you, regardless.
And you don't want to conjecture, and I admire that. I appreciate that. Start throwing out theories, but you may have seen yourself that there are already theories, hypotheses flying around all over the place. And I've got to say, and I said it a few minutes ago, you obviously investigate everything. You investigate the 3 crew members aboard the U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter. You make sure that there is nothing fishy going on there that you want to take a second look at. But in the meantime, the reasonable expectation is that there was a miscalculation, a miscommunication, an accident, what the military calls a mishap, right? And you said that you've been involved in multiple aviation mishap investigations. Is that right?
Yes, I did one stateside and then one also in combat. The biggest thing, like I said, I know people are throwing out theories and stuff like that, but I honestly wouldn't pay any attention to those until the Army Aviation Safety Center, and they're going to send out really good investigators for this because the visibility in the area that it was in. Plus, I'm sure the NTSB and Federal Aviation will be involved in that as well. But I would definitely caution people not to speculate. Flying is inherently dangerous, especially when you're in a congested airspace such as that area. My experience there was that the controllers and air traffic personnel are some of the best in the country. Also, the pilots and the training is some of the best in the country at 12th Aviation and the Air Operations Brigade. I would also, I'm sorry, it's just, I'm pretty sad right now. I just got into work, and I hate hearing about this stuff, but
of course,
aviation's inherently dangerous, and my heart just goes out to those families. And hopefully there's lessons learned, but regardless of how it happened, and a lot of accidents are, it can happen in the blink of an eye if you get off of your heading, airspace, or altitude in a congested area, and nighttime just makes it that much. Nighttime and bad weather make things a lot more dangerous. But
right,
yeah, we'll find out once they complete the investigations, and that's what and they are very, very thorough investigations, and they get reviewed by people. So I know that there'll definitely be answers after they do that.
Yeah, and the unit involved in this incident was also 12th, right? 12th, what is it, 12th Aviation Wing?
Yeah, so 12th Aviation flies out of Belvoir, and the Alpha Company is basically the VIP unit, and Bravo and Charlie Company. Everyone does VIP, but yeah, it's a helicopter battalion, and like I said, it was one of the best units I've ever been a part of. And you get very good and well-trained pilots there due to the people that we fly in that area.
When you say people that we fly in that area, what are we talking about? We're talking about
Pentagon and VIPs, executives, high-ranking government officials, foreign dignitaries, that type of stuff.
Right. And would you fly in and out of the helicopter pad at the Pentagon, for example?
Yes, we are trained to do that. Yes, we do that a lot.
Okay, and you're flying people around. You may be going to Andrews or even to NSA or to CIA up the river. You do that kind of flight also?
Yeah, not so much the CIA's type stuff, but we go into Andrews a lot for sure.
Uh-huh. All right, well, what do we need to know about this incident that we probably don't know because we're not Army Black Hawk pilots that have flown out of Belvoir with the 12th Aviation? What should we know?
I would just stick by what I said earlier. It's going to be thoroughly investigated, and I have full confidence in the ability of the Army and National Transportation to do that. In the FAA, they're very professional, great organizations, and I would just say a prayer for those families.
Right.
It's very tough, and the Army aviation community also is not very big. So when they release the names, I know a lot of my friends and possibly myself might know some of these people, and yeah, it's an inherently dangerous job, but we do it because we love it and we do it for our country. Some of the best years of my life was an Army aviator, and thanks for letting me talk about this, Chris. And I really hope everyone out there doesn't speculate on what happened. And if I could say anything, I would just say wait until the investigation's complete. My experience shows that they've all been very, very well done, the investigations.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know that because it's the world we live in, that the 3 crew members aboard the Black Hawk are, as individuals, going to be scrutinized to see if there are any red flags there because, again, people are already conjecturing that there's something more here than meets the eye. And I should share, Major, the where do we have it here? The FBI has weighed in a little bit on this, and they're saying that there's nothing to see here. There are no red flags this early on suggesting any foul play or terrorism or anything like that. And that's the FBI, which unfortunately doesn't have the reputation that they used to have. And that's tragic. But so far, what they're saying is, no, we don't have any red flags here. And that is what I would expect, actually. It's what I'd expect. And as you said something that I didn't know, Kenneth, and that is that you got to stay below 200 feet when you're in your Black Hawk. You're going down the Potomac River. You're going past Reagan Airport. Your ceiling is 200 feet.
That's due to the takeoff and approach paths of the heavies, the airliners. That's not throughout all of that airspace, but around that airport, yeah, you have to be below 200 feet in a helicopter.
Wow, ceiling is 200 feet at night, pitch darkness, 200 feet, and that's interesting to know. And I did have one of the text exchanges I had this morning. Someone said, "Why was the helicopter so low? Why was it that low?" And you just explained that.
Yeah, and the ATC is very good at putting people in holding patterns along some of those checkpoints there. But like I said, I mean, it's very congested, and it's a small airspace, and at nighttime or under NVGs, and I don't know if the crew was under NVGs, but it gets a little more complicated with that.
Yeah.
But so I hope hopefully something can be learned from it. 3 crew members aboard the Black Hawk. It would definitely be the 2 pilots and the crew chief. Luckily there weren't more passengers there, but my wife was choked up this morning too about the people in the airplane almost getting home expecting to land. So
right.
Yeah, sad day. All I can say is my heart goes out to all the families involved in this. And, please, for people out there that, don't have any experience with this type of stuff, I would say the Army and also the FAA pilots and everyone, they're very well high-trained professionals. And, inevitably accidents do happen because it's a dangerous job that we do. But I definitely don't think people should conject on what has happened yet. It will come out for sure, and hopefully there's lessons learned there. But thanks for letting me talk about this, Chris. And like I said, I listen to your show in the mornings, and it's great for my drive to work. And also just wanted to say hi to all the fellow Army aviators out there listening and crew chiefs. God
bless you. Nodding, saluting you. Honestly, God bless you. Thank you, and thank you for calling in and sharing your common sense and your cool demeanor. I appreciate it. I hope to run into you out on the street here one of these days.
Sounds good, Chris. Me too. Have a great day.
Thanks, buddy. Say hello. Say hello when we see each other, please. Now, so that's what's going on in Washington, D.C., and that is great, Major Kenneth Davis. And it's one of the great benefits of having a radio show based in Washington, D.C. is, all the experts you see everywhere on TV 24 hours a day. Well, guess where 90% of them are? And all you have to do is open the lines in Washington, and you get people like Major Davis, and that's a great thing, I've got to say. So thank you for that. And Anthony calling in his daughter, believing that she was an eyewitness to the helicopter peeling off by the Pentagon, and that may be the case. Again, I watch air traffic, the airplanes in and out of Reagan from my home, from my apartment, and the helicopter traffic too. And I notice, I know one helicopter from another, and I notice the helicopter traffic, and it's kind of crazy because literally night before last, at home, I said to my best girl in our new apartment 1 month, I said, I think the air traffic patterns have changed in the last couple of weeks. The helicopters in particular, and some of the traffic along the Potomac going into Reagan, too. And she said, God, you're boring. And and I'm still scratching my head about some of that. We are at 888-630-9625. Now, the brand new Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of the Department of Defense, Pete Hegseth, decorated Army combat veteran, and I'm going to say our brand new Secretary of the Department of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, is not there. He must be happy about that, something else he doesn't have to show up for. Can stay home and chest feed. But Pete Hegseth, not long ago this morning, commenting on the aviation mishap, the crash at Reagan Airport.
At about 8:48 last night, a UH-60 assigned to the U.S. Army Aviation Brigade in the Military District of Washington, Fort Belvoir, Virginia, collided tragically with a civilian airliner. The unit involved, the Army unit involved, was Bravo Company 12th Aviation Battalion at Fort Belvoir. It was an annual proficiency training flight. And when we look at the crew, and not all kin have been notified, so we're going to withhold ranks and names at this point. We do know on our side who was involved. It was a fairly experienced crew, and that was doing a required annual night evaluation. They did have night vision goggles.
They did have night vision goggles. Is not the same as saying that they were wearing night vision goggles, that their night vision goggles were affixed. I would imagine for nighttime, especially for a certification flight, that you would have your night vision goggles, your NVGs, available at arm's length. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you were wearing them at that moment, based on what Pete Hegseth said.
We anticipate that the investigation will quickly be able to determine whether the aircraft was in the corridor and at the right altitude at the time of the incident. As I mentioned, next of kin notifications are ongoing. It's a tragedy, a horrible loss of life for those 64 souls on that civilian airliner, and of course, the 3 soldiers in that Black Hawk. They're in our prayers, their families and their communities. As people are notified, I can't imagine. And I know it's gone from a rescue mission to a recovery mission, and we're with all the first responders that are moving actively too. So at the Defense Department, our thoughts and prayers go out. We are actively investigating to find out what happened and why. And as we get updates, you will have them. God bless.
I've got to say, Sean Duffy, I think new Transportation Secretary, was very steady and smart this morning at his press conference with first responders and local officials, and Pete Hegseth, I think, handled that situation very well, very, very well. And it's a fast-moving train right now. Got to kind of tap the brakes and see what you can find out today. Now that the sun is up, we're in the light of day. We can start. Remember, the recovery effort is still ongoing in the Potomac River, and we're learning as we go.